Hello, everyone, and thank you for showing up tonight for the premiere of Heart and Soul Living an Extraordinary Life. And I hope you're as excited about this as I am. And tonight I have on a co-host and guest, Dr. Ruth Anderson, who is the founder of this wonderful network, EWN, the Enlightened World Network. And I want to thank Dr. Ruth and EWN for hosting the show because EWN is a place where you can find positive talk, peace, calm, and solutions to so many of the challenges that all of us are experiencing these days. I know I certainly have, and I know a lot of the people that I know are also going through challenges. So this is a safe place. And there's so many wonderful programs on Enlightened World Network. So I hope that you check out Enlightened World Network for all of the other programming. In the meantime, I'd like to say, hi, Dr. Ruth. Thank you for being my guest tonight.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Michelle. I'm so excited for this first show. We got to enjoy your Divinely Inspired by the Numbers. So that series of classes, and now we're starting Heart and Soul. So I can't wait to see where this goes.
Well, you know what? Neither can I. You know how these things are, right? We just kind of go with the flow. This is one of my favorite topics. Tonight, we're talking about the alchemy of relationships. And the question I want to put out there is, do you have strong likes or dislikes for certain people or certain behaviors? Or have you ever disliked someone and felt like, well, they didn't like you as well? And do you become frustrated with the behavior of members of your family or even friends? And I think all of us would answer that in the affirmative. I don't think any of us are free of those kind of, let's call them attachments in a way. We'll call them attachments. So what is alchemy? Alchemy is just what seems like a magical process of transformation, creation, or a combination of those two elements. So what does alchemy of relationships mean? Well, it's looking at the inner dynamics of our relationships and transforming them into a more elevated, spiritually understood relationship. And at the very best, into a holy relationship. Now, if not that, if both people cannot or do not recognize the interdynamics of what's going on between them, then at least one person can recognize and transform their reaction, their perceptions. So just recently, I'm a big fan of Tom Kenyon, and Tom Kenyon is a renowned sound alchemist, a psychotherapist, and a shaman. And I read this little blurb on his site and I loved it. It's a little harsh, but I think we can work down or up from either from here. Many of us do relationships the way we play poker. We do everything possible to get the upper hand. And if that fails, we bluff, we pretend to hold the cards we don't have, and we even deceive. Now, that sounds, I know, a little bit extreme, but, honestly, how many of us truly reveal who we are and lay out all our cards on the table, all our hopes, all our fears, all our pettiness, our controlling nature, our jealous thoughts, even our manipulations? Now, I understand that is really, really challenging, but I do think since we are in and have been in the age of Aquarius, I think that Aquarian energy is forcing our hand to lay our cards down. And honestly, I think most of us would really, really do well with some coaching to help us when it comes to relationships, because relationships are complex. It's so challenging to understand relationships, but not just relationships ourselves. the other person. And this is where it gets really, really confusing. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about in a few moments, but for the moment, I just want to emphasize that examining the relationships in our lives on a deeper level can lead to a more profound understanding of who we are and our unresolved issues. Relationships are a mirror to our soul, and it's an opportunity for tremendous self-growth and self-improvement. And I'll go out on a limb and say that I believe all our relationships are here for our self-growth. And I believe that's the soul, S-O-L-E or S-O-U-L, purpose of relationships, is so that we can grow spiritually. So think about this. Think about, how do you feel if I say everyone we attract in our life is a mirror for us in certain ways? All of our relationships, our families, children, friends, our coworkers, neighbors, and guess what? Even our pets, our significant other, they all reflect certain parts of us. And how we feel with someone is usually an indication of how we feel about parts of us that they mirror. So there may be some of you out there that went through my year-long Living Miraculously classes. And if you did, you no doubt noticed that there was this theme, and that theme is this through all of my classes year long. It always comes back to us in relationships and what we're attracting. And for the most part, how our world is unfolding is based on years of how we've constructed our personal worldview. Because I believe our whole world is constantly and continuously being perceived and co-created based on our belief. That's really the bottom line. However, in uncovering those beliefs, I think you have to really go on this psychological, archaeological dig. And the reason I say archaeological, I think that's a really good analogy, because with any archaeological dig, it takes time, it takes patience, it involves excavating what lies beneath. It involves usually using specialized tools and techniques to help recover that data that is below the surface. Because over the years, we've put together not just one belief system, but numerous. So we've created different images of ourselves. So our behaviors are driven by our beliefs determine our self-image. So we find in relationships, what's continuously taking place is something called projection, or what I like to call the crazy train ride, or the magic mirror. And, the theory of psychological projection was developed by Sigmund Freud. And projection is what we were doing when we like or dislike traits in others. And it's often our defense mechanism. So I'd just be interested so far, Ruth, and what do you think about that?
Well, you've said a whole bunch of things here, Michele, and Gabby's with us online, by the way. And
she's hi.
Eating up what you're saying. So she's in the right place right now. For me, I have this odd piece about me, and it's always been there, and I really couldn't defend it. I can find something valuable or something good in like everybody. And some folks don't understand that. And I think for me, it's because I connect with folks on a soul to soul basis. And souls aren't bad. Souls aren't evil. Souls aren't lower level. And so when I connect in with folks, it's at that level. So that makes being in relationship actually easier.
Yes.
Because my husband or my, my children or whoever can act a certain way, and I can distance myself from it and not take it so personally, not take it so seriously, because I do believe that every one of the people that is in my life is there to teach me something, and is not always comfortable, and has been predetermined beforehand what they were going to teach me. And so sometimes all I do is sit back and in my mind think, thank you. You are doing such a great job at driving me crazy or making me, hurt or whatever. Thank you, because this is giving me the opportunity to work through this. And as soon as I learn this, then I don't have to learn it again. So I do believe that the universe keeps giving us the same thing that we have to learn over and over in different ways with different people until we learn it. So the faster I can learn that,
Right.
I don't have to go through that again. So I don't personally get caught up into so many of like the triggers you were talking about or the defense mechanisms or that kind of thing, because not to say that I'm perfect, not to say that I don't get defensive at times, right? But most of the time, I'm really able to distance, see the person as a spirit, as a soul doing what they were meant to do, which is teach me. And then it just de-escalates the whole thing.
That is spot on. And I will tell you, I don't think we have to go any further because you summed it up pretty much.
The show's over.
The show's over. That is really, really beautiful. And that's exactly where I'm going with this is, and to show people there are tools that you can use to not allow yourself to, or if, let me just say this, if you are triggered, how to handle that, because we do get triggered, we're human beings. But the other side of it too is when I think we forget that even when we admire someone, it's an opportunity to discover another aspect of ourselves as well. So I wanted to just, take some baby steps with this and walk through it. So if we deny the existence of certain traits in ourselves, you can bet that somehow they're going to show up in others, for sure. And to be psychologically and spiritually whole, we have to take back our positive projections as well as our negative projections. We have to cut those cords or remove the plugs that we've attached or allowed ourselves to be attached to others, and then turn them around and plug them back into us. And I believe, as I said at the beginning of this, that's why I think relationships are here. They're to teach us. That is the main purpose. So we all have different images of ourselves, and it's our self-image that we are projecting onto another person, which in turn creates our reactions in relationships. But guess what? The other person's doing the exact same thing. So if we want to understand our relationship dynamics, all we have to do is address the real issues, the images that we carry in our minds of who we are. And I'll talk a little bit about this later, but I do have an exercise for anybody who's listening. If they email me and we can talk about that later, I'd be so excited to email them an exercise that they can do and then come back next week and we can also talk about it. So, let's use an example. Maybe you have a strong inner critic. Maybe you're criticizing yourself all the time or a good part of the time. So what kind of signal are you putting out there? You're emitting a signal of negativity that affects everyone around you. And this can play out in a couple of ways. It may mean that you're surrounded by people who criticize you. Or on the other hand, maybe you're the one who criticizes others. And perhaps if anybody criticizes you, you flip out. So it's very likely that the energy of criticism is very deep within you or here's another piece of it. It's a feeling of not being good enough. And okay, so I'm going to use an example. We'll take an example. We'll say Bob and Mary. So Bob and Mary each have very different images of themselves or stories about who they are based on the beliefs that were downloaded into their subconscious at a very early age, which is true for just about everyone. And one belief that Bob and Mary share is that they are not good enough. So Bob and Mary go out on a blind date together. Bob meets Mary, and his first impression is that she's beautiful and she's too good for him. So what happens to Bob? He immediately becomes uncomfortable and maybe stiff, maybe not so talkative. And he's kind of quiet during dinner. So Mary notices that, and she assumes Bob's not very interested in her. And then she assumes that he finds her boring. So we could play out that whole scenario to the end, but you probably get, where this is going. They've both projected onto one another these false images that they have on themselves. So if you feel like you're not good enough, not attractive enough, or somehow inadequate, you are broadcasting these feelings, and they're going to be projected onto other people. And somehow it's going to show up as a reflection in your life. So unfortunately, we kind of do that a lot with all our relationships. We try not to, hopefully, and when we can start identifying the triggers, that's a huge step in our growth. So okay, here's another example. Jessica is at a family gathering. She thinks that Carla's being snippy with her, especially when Jessica's husband's in the room. But okay, Carla is got to be Jessica's husband's sister, right? So she tells her sister-in-law. Okay. So she explains to her husband that she's tried as hard as she could, but the reason she doesn't like Carla is because Carla doesn't like her. So all she has done is projected her feelings onto Carla. So projection is used usually as a defense mechanism in our life. But this is the interesting thing. If you call out someone or you spot, well, here's the expression: you spot it, you got it. I don't know if you ever heard that. Yes. So the second part of that, you spot it, you got it. So see it and free it. And I love that. So see it and free it. Because everything that we experience as other or external to ourselves represents just a protection or a projection of our internal states. We project onto other all the different characteristics, the ones that we admire, the ones that we don't. And as I said, it's also usually a defense mechanisms. And we use defense mechanisms. Why? Because it's our way of coping in the world and feelings and emotions that we probably have trouble expressing or coming to terms with. And the mirror principle or the projection principle is simply this: what I see in you is also in me. And if what I see were not already in me, I wouldn't even recognize it in you. It's kind of like the concept of the pot calling the kettle black.
Can I give you a beautiful example of that?
I would love it.
I was speaking with Debbie Garcia, who's one of our speakers. And at the end of a conversation, I said, I really respect you. And she said, so what do you like about me? And I listed off about, 5, 6 things. And she said, well, that's what you are. She said, because if you didn't have those traits, you couldn't recognize them in me.
Bingo.
Now, I thought it was a beautiful way of demonstrating that very concept.
Bingo, that's perfect. And that's an important piece to understand too, because when we talk about all of these things, it seems sometimes that we may be talking about negative traits and, we're always focusing on the negative traits and how do we have to change that. But we have to be really conscious of exactly the piece that you just demonstrated, that when we see things in other people, we admire things in other people, it's because that's within us. And that was a perfect example. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Here's a story from Deepak Chopra that he tells, and I love this. I don't know if you ever heard it, but he talks about many years ago, he was confronted in a seminar that he was doing by a woman who insisted on getting 3 hours or hours of his time, whatever it was. And he told her that he just couldn't do that in the midst of all the other people's needs there. It was impossible for me to give you that much of my personal time. And she became pretty angry and she yelled, then why do you write books that say anything is possible? And then she continued to kind of verbally abuse him in front of the group. Okay, so later when he had a moment to himself, he thought that because of the emotional effect that it had on him, that some could, and that's the other key I want to mention in a minute, what was going on here. And maybe he should look at it because he was pretty upset about it. So he wrote down all the traits about her that bothered him. And he listed rudeness, impatience, aggressiveness, being demanding, anger. And so he phoned his wife and he told her what he was doing. And he asked her, did she ever notice those traits in him? And he said there was a long silence on the other end. And so he realized that he too, just like everyone else, could display some of those unpleasant traits. And this is another point that I want to make. What was the point? Where did it go? Okay, I got to pull it back into my head. Okay, it went someplace. Okay, brought it back. It's the traits that we find really, really, really upsetting. Those are the things that we have to look at, because you might see something and just a little bit like shake your head, but it's not something that really triggers you or impacts you. But if it's something that really bothers you a lot, if you find yourself getting upset for a period of time, angry, and worst case scenario, raging, there is something really important for you to look at. I know people who are, they are constantly criticizing everybody else, like I mentioned earlier, but if you say anything to them, they flip out. So that's somebody who probably has a feeling inside of not being good enough, not having self-worth. So what are some of the ways we know that we're projecting? Well, as I just said, one of the ways would be when you have this righteousness about something, whatever, being very self-righteous, like that's wrong, that's horrible, that's terrible. Now, I'm not saying, again, and this is why we have to kind of understand the balance here. I'm not saying there aren't horrific things that go on in the world that you wouldn't be upset by, of course. But if you're raging against it all the time, then there's something going on in you. That doesn't mean that what the other person or the other, what the situation isn't valid. I hope people do understand, like if I say, if somebody is being really, really critical of you, you have to look at yourself. That doesn't absolve the other person of that behavior, but it all starts with us. It doesn't mean that you are imagining it. It doesn't mean any of those things. It just means that what is inside us gets projected onto another person, place, or thing. But that person, place, or thing is also responsible for their behavior. But as we know, we can't change anyone. We can change ourselves.
Right.
So again, one of the ways to notice if you're projecting is the self-righteousness. You're 100% convinced that you're 100% right about the situation, and you're convinced that the other person is at fault. So that's when you want to say, okay, what is it in me that I might be projecting? What is maybe a part of the wounded child? Another way to notice it is feeling wrong or feeling wounded. If you have a disagreement that leaves you feeling deeply hurt or wounded, chances are you're projecting something from your past onto them. Again, it doesn't absolve the other person of their behavior, but it's triggering something that happened in you from your childhood. And here's another really good example. When my husband was alive, we had a conversation about reading, because we were going to a Seder, and was it Seder or Passover? You know, when you do the reading. And he said, I'm really uncomfortable, doing that. And I asked him, why? What's the reason for that? And he said, I don't know. And I said, well, when do you ever remember feeling uncomfortable reading? And it came out of him like a flash that he remembers it just came right out. And if I could snap, I would snap my fingers to show you how quick it was, because he never thought about it before, ever. But he remembered a time when he was in 3rd or 4th grade, and he got up in front of the class to read something, and he must have stumbled over some words, and some of the kids snickered or laughed, and that was as crystal clear in his mind. There you go. Sometimes we don't give enough. We say, well, it happened when I was a kid. It only happened one time. Our subconscious is a very, very interesting creature, and it stores things and it replays it. And we don't always know what is that one. 10 things could happen that might have been shamed you, but there might be only 1 or 2 that stays there, that sticks. And we're always looking for evidence to support that belief, and we'll get it, by golly, one way or the other.
Well, it creates a filter.
Exactly.
So then everything that you're looking at through that filter, you're seen from that wounded place.
Exactly.
Right.
If you're having feelings of high anxiety and during a disagreement, or panicky or something like that, well, I got to resolve this right this minute. That's another indication that you're reliving something from, your childhood or your past. And because you want to get it done right now, it's this intensity about it. So those are just 3 ways that you would notice if you're projecting. But then the question is, how do we stop projecting, right? Well, there are so many ways, and I think the best place to start is just start with your immediate relationships, what's in front of you, and look at them. What's the reason you don't get along with certain people? Or even if you do get along, what is it about them that might irritate you or annoy you? Do you ever feel like somebody's out to get you? So try to figure out what's going on there. Try to look at your past, because what is the feeling? If you feel like you're being steamrolled, when did you ever feel like that before? Try to bring up in your memory, when did I ever feel like, when was the first time, or when did I ever feel like this? And also the other question to ask is, have I ever done that? Do I do that at times to certain people? So once you really become aware of what you're doing, believe me, it gets easier and easier to spot it. You know, as we said, spot it, you got it. It becomes a lot easier. So it's all the same, Ruth. It's all the same in every situation for our spiritual growth. Become a great observer of your life, of yourself. Um, okay, so what else did I want to mention about this? I think there was something else about, well, let me stop there for a second and regroup a little bit. So what do you think about that? Do you have some input?
I do have some input. I think, and we can't be here on Enlightened World Network and talk about some of the bigger metaphysical and spiritual aspects of all of
Yeah.
this. I do believe that we carry information with us from our ancestors, and it comes forward. And that's, you know, Terry Angel is doing right now 7 days of 7 generational clearings and healings here on Enlightened World Network. So I've done it with her 2 days now. And one of the family lore, one of the family stories that I'm the only one that seems to know, which fascinates me, is the adage of your best is none too good. And it came down through my father, it came down through his father, and it came down that familial line. And I'm the only one of the 4 of us kids that could put words to it.
Wow.
We all 4 have been impacted, but I'm the only one that sort of was able to stand back and see from whence it came. And
Wow.
if you think that doesn't impact relationships, oh yes, it does. And
Mhm.
through Terry's work, these 2 days, I have been able to clear that energy from my father's ancestral line. And in so doing, clearing that from my siblings, my father, my grandfather, and the whole way back. And so now I believe that I can be different in relationships because I don't have that overarching aspect of my best is none too good. So,
Wow.
you know, when we're being so mindful and
Mhm.
conscious about looking at our own behaviors and the things that we say and the triggers, don't forget to look at the bigger spiritual picture of
Right.
maybe this isn't even my energy that's impacting me here.
Mhm. Yes, I agree. And it's also very much ancestral for sure. And we have, you know, this lineage and things we can be impacted by these, whatever it is, energies or traits or whatever from past. Absolutely. I believe that. Absolutely. And I believe that we have to start someplace. And if everything else isn't working, then, you know, there's so many things that we can do. And the work that Terry's doing, I'm sure is fabulous. Um, that's another place that we can go, another way. There's so many tools. And I know Ken Wilber, I remember some things that he also said that sometimes this stuff can seem really, really mind twisting. Um, how can I be projecting? How can this be my stuff and not theirs? Because we're always looking to kind of get rid of it. We don't want to feel bad. Nobody wants to feel bad, right? We want to feel good. But whether you're projecting an angry self or an arrogant self or a know it all self, whatever it is, they're all parts of us that just need love. It's just all parts of us that we need love and we need forgiveness. And in any relationship, if we could just take a breath and realize that when something happens that we feel triggered, to just take a breath and say, I just did this the other day, by the way. I noticed that when I was talking with someone, they had said something, and there's normally like a certain interaction, that will happen. And I thought, no, I'm going to change the dynamics of this. It wasn't anything really bad, but I noticed, there was a little interaction that would go on. And somebody once said to me, they asked me to read something or critique it, whatever. And they asked me whether or not they should send this letter to a person. And I said, oh, okay, well, that certainly is your decision. No, I really want to know what you think. And I said, well, personally, I would sit on it. I don't think it sounds like more fuel, adding fuel to the fire. That's my opinion, I said. And they said, I knew you would say that. And I said, okay, so then you really didn't need to ask me, did you?
Right, then why did you ask? Yeah.
Yeah. So, many times we're so really hungry just to be acknowledged and to be loved. And we go about it sometimes in the really oddest ways. But the most important thing for us to do is learn how to love ourselves. Just know, as you said, gosh, we're on one level, we're interacting. If we can get to interact on that soul to soul level, it changes the whole dynamics of everything. And sometimes in some situations, I have pictured people who maybe I had an antagonistic relationship with. There were a lot of addicts in my life. And I just would picture on their forehead, and not in a mean way, I am sick, I am not well. So I wouldn't react when they would say the most outrageous things. I could just remember that on a spirit level, well, see, I believe that the spirit is that we have the spirit, which is perfect, and the soul also comes here to learn. So on a spirit level, they're all perfect. And then there's the soul level that needs to learn. And then there's the personality that is wrapped up in the ego. And as we talked about before, the ego is never happy with anything. And I'm not saying we should kill the ego or anything like that. I'm just saying that the ego has this way of going around with a big measuring stick saying, I'm not good enough, I'm better than you, I'm less than you. The ego is never at peace with what is. That's your spirit part of you that is in peace. It's all okay. But the ego has this way of wanting to always measure up or measure down in some cases. So sometimes what I do is have a conversation with my ego and say, hey, what's going on? You seem really upset. You want to talk about it? It's always being in a state of loving kindness with yourself and all aspects of yourself. Because the only reason we would ever do anything, and I'll say this unequivocally, happy people don't do mean things.
Right.
And the only reason we would ever do anything hurtful is because we're hurt. Again, sometimes people challenge me on that and say, that's no excuse. I'm not using it as an excuse. I'm using it as an explanation. And maybe just perhaps if we understand that, we can respond differently. It doesn't mean you stay in an abusive relationship. I want to make that clear. Sometimes you have to walk away from a relationship for your own health. It just means examining what's going on with you. What would be the reason that you would pull that relationship into your life? Doesn't mean you have to stay there. If it's abusive, no, you walk away. So it's a pretty complicated, and yet it's complex. And yet, this is a great quote. Let me find this. It is only when we have the courage to face things exactly as they are, without any self-deception or illusion, that a light will develop out of the events by which the path to success may be recognized. And that's from the I Ching. And that's, I think, says it all, doesn't it?
I think it does. You know, I would like to add something. For me, the best gift I can bring to any relationship is my spiritual walk. Because spending time in meditation every day, which I do, gives me a completely different perspective on me, on my life, on my body, on what I'm doing here, on the relationships that I'm in. And I will take, I call it prayerful meditation. I'll take, a family member to prayerful meditation, and I get taught the most incredible things and get to witness healings for them. And my relationship with the spiritual divinity feeds me.
Yes.
And so when I leave meditation every morning, I'm already full. And so I'm not seeking validation from my loved ones. It's like the cupcake and the icing on top. The cupcake, I come out of meditation, I've got the complete cupcake. I'm good. I look to my relationships for the icing, for the fun, for the enjoyment. And that makes a world of difference in my relationships.
It absolutely does. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Really, it's so true. I start every day, just about every single day. I can't start my day without meditation, without going within.
Right.
Not that I can't, that's not true. I don't want to. Because every day, spirituality for me, and I know for so many people, we are spiritual beings having a human experience, but that concept is something that is with me 24/7. I don't ever forget that. And it doesn't mean that I am constantly in prayer or oming or, not rushing around or not doing things. It's just that I'm always conscious of the fact that this is a spiritual trip that we're going through, a journey, a spiritual trip, a journey. Relationships are here to show me who I am. I'm not here to change anyone. If I can share information that has helped me, and if it helps someone else, that's beautiful, because we're all teachers and students at the same time, all the time.
Right. And when I go into meditation, and especially at the healing pool, and I know Gabby and some of you all have been with us at the healing pool, when we're there with spirit and all that's holding our cellular pieces together falls away, and we see that we are really only spirit and really nothing but love, when we're coming from that place that my nothing but loveness sees your nothing but loveness, everything else falls away.
Yeah, it does. Beautiful. Really beautiful.
Your show is the heart and soul. And to me, that is it. That is the entire package of heart and soul right there. That we are nothing but love.
We really, really, I know for some people that's hard to believe or imagine, but you're speaking truth. At least you're speaking my truth. And I'm sure you're speaking the truth for a lot of other people as well. And it's just our job to share that. That's our job, is to share our love and our gifts.
Right.
And that's a whole nother topic, discovering what your gifts are, because we all have a gift. And then our responsibility is to share that gift with others and with the world. And So this whole alchemy of relationships, if you want a better relationship with someone, or you're confused or perplexed, start looking at what's going on within you, and pause. If you feel you're being triggered, stop. You don't have to, we don't always have to answer a question. We don't always have to respond. We can pause. There's a lot of strength and power in the pause, right? So there are other things I guess we could talk about, but I think that's enough for people to meditate on maybe for a while and think about. And if anybody would like the exercise that I have, they can email me at Michele Landers, and my name is up on the screen, correct?
In the description.
Yeah.
I'm typing it in, Michele Landers.
At bellsouth.net. And I'll be happy to answer questions or send you the exercise. And I would love to revisit this a little bit next week and find out if anybody had any thoughts about it, questions, or if they want the exercise and they do it, what happened? That's always the exciting part. You know, when we start writing, and a lot of times I like to handwrite things because sometimes I think there's something lost, you know, for me in doing it on the computer. I think in some of this deep work, journaling with your hand, the energy of it is a good idea. So I would be really anxious if somebody would like, anybody wants to do the exercise and then come back and tell me, hey, you know what I discovered? I'd like epiphanies. I really do like I love a good epiphany. That's for my friend Michael Ann. I love a good epiphany. So thank you so much, Ruth, for this opportunity and for being the guest here tonight and for your input, which is really beautiful. Love your energy and love what you are doing with Enlightened World Network. It's really blessed. And I know that you know that. And all of us that are with you on this journey know that too. So thank you.
It's got Archangel Michael all over it.
Yeah, you know, I have his candle burning right now. I borrowed him for a couple of days.
No, you're not borrowed. We each get our own version. It's awesome.
I know. But I did, you know, I got an Archangel Michael candle. I get different ones. Sometimes I just get the colors. Sometimes I just, you know, I get them that have the names on them. So it was funny when I lit the Archangel Michael, I said, I'm borrowing you from Dr. Ruth. Okay. So
it's funny. Well, we're just so pleased, Michele, to have you with Enlightened World Network. The gifts that you bring to us, whether it's through your intuitive work, whether it's through your numerology, whether it's here talking about relationship, you belong here. Your voice belongs here. And we're so glad you're here.
Thank you. I feel so blessed. I really do. I have a home.
You do have a home.
Yeah.
You do. And Gabby has a home, and all of our friends that are watching live, you have a home. Enlightened World Network is a safe spiritual community where we all can grow. We're all growing. I'm taking Terry's classes. I'm sitting there sobbing with Gabby, who's taking the class. So we're all here learning, and we're learning together. And I'm so excited to bring this for everybody here.
And we're blessed to have that, because it is one of the things, you know, not to go on and on, but one of the things that I do, there's so many things I love about Enlightened World Network, but what I really love is the safety of it. And even though I know we all have to a degree in ego, I don't sense that in any of the relationships or interactions I've had with everyone. It's all been compassionate, understanding, empathetic. It feels so right. I guess I don't know what other word to use right now, but it feels right. It feels good. It feels blessed. It's teamwork.
Right. Well, before any host comes on, I ask Archangel Michael if they should be on with us.
Wow.
Some of those names he's brought to me. So this is very much in the flow of what he's wanting this to become.
That's huge. That's wonderful.
It is huge. And actually, if you watch and follow the hosts, the beautiful thing is that every single one of them is growing. You can't be involved with Enlightened World Network and not grow, because
Right.
it just is the energy of it to expand and take on new challenges and really just see, how can I impact more people? What am I being called to do now? And who can I connect with to do that? It is so exciting. The synergy that takes place with it is
Right.
so exciting to watch.
It is. It is. What a blessing, huh? And what better time? Everything is in perfect timing and alignment. We certainly need it now. We really, 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 we always can use it. And now more than ever, we need to reach out and support one another in a heartfelt, soulful way.
Right. Well, and that's what the meditation a day is to help
Yeah.
with as well. Every single day, there's a live guided meditation, and that's so we can come together and connect in with ourselves and with spirit, and link arms with each other. It's
Right.
so crucially important right now.
Well, I feel elevated.
I'm glad. I do too. I do too. And we've
Thank
got
you.
beautiful people online with us as well. So I think we should wrap up the show right here and just thank everybody for being here with us tonight. Michele, I can't wait
Yes.
to see where this show takes you and your guests each week.
Yes. So I will be on next Thursday again, and that is the 11th. Is that not?
That would be.
That would be the 11th. Okay. Same time, same station. Not sure who my important guest is going to be, but we'll figure it out, and I'll post what the topic is going to be. And I welcome all comments, suggestions. I welcome that, because we're all in this together. So thank you all for showing up. Thank you so much, Dr. Ruth. Love you.
I love you too. I love you too. All right. So friends, we're going to say good night, and we'll see you later. God bless.
Yes.